of sound mind and body. Now here is today's The View from a Pew, heard all around the world on YouTube. Just search for The View from a Pew.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. My name is Mac McCoy, and welcome to this week's version of Why Choose Christianity, which is a program written by Steve Arts, very talented writer, and everything else, but very talented writer, and he is my co-host, and everything that we do on this program, he has created, and you will, if you've never listened to this before or watched this show, you'll recognize that there is brilliance in every stump of wood or toadstool or never mind. Anyway, he's just a real brilliant writer. Today we are on chapter 9, and you are calling this What is Willful Ignorance? And I like that. Now, first of all, do we have a word of the day? You didn't start.
Well, no, I've got 4 Ds of avoiding accountability.
4 Ds of avoiding accountability.
Yeah, because that's really becoming important in this subject.
Oh, okay.
And these 4 are deny, deflect, defend, and diffuse. And I got that from Medium magazine.
What magazine?
Medium.
Medium?
Yeah.
Okay. But you also said it was in a book that was written in 1886.
Yeah, the book is called Beyond Good and Evil, The Prelude to Philosophy of the Future. And of course, that was written by the German philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche. And he's the one that explored what he calls the will to ignorance. And I took the liberty to change that a little bit. But it refers to the conscious choice to avoid knowledge of or truth. He suggested that this phenomenon arises from a desire to escape uncomfortable realities.
So is deny, deflect, defend, and diffuse a step-by-step process, or you could choose just one of them?
I think it's more of a step-by-step, really. I mean, I suppose you could, it depends how much you're fully committed to it.
Okay, so I'm trying to figure this out. Is there 4 somethings that would be the opposite of deny? So accept. Deflect would, what would be the opposite of deflect?
Attract.
Attract, very good. Defend. So.
Offend. Or aggressive, opposite.
Aggressive, okay.
A charge.
And diffuse would
be, let's see, what would be? Maintain it. In other words, maintain the wholeness of something.
Okay. So. The 4 Ds of avoiding accountability is one side of willful ignorance.
Well, it's because if willful ignorance, the way this is being treated, is if you see something you don't want to accept, don't want to be accountable for, don't want to work against you, then the best way to handle that is never know anything about it.
Okay, so what would be the other title? Now, we thought about the opposites of deny, deflect, defend, and diffuse, and that is what is willful ignorance. What would the title be if we use the other 4, the opposite of those? What is willful preparation? What is what?
Reality.
Okay, what is reality?
What is reality? Yeah. Reality is what is. Willful ignorance is making something that's not.
Well, what does Nietzsche believe, I probably said that wrong, believe this willful ignorance causes?
Have you ever taken any German?
I was the president of the German club in high school.
I think you probably...
Sprechen die Deutsch?
Well, then you should have learned that Nietzsche is not that hard to pronounce. Anyway, I don't mean to critique you at this point. However, I do believe that one of your friends said you have a really good face for radio, and I want to concur on that point.
Okay, good.
So Nietzsche is willful. He says that he believes it can lead to a distorted view of life, and that's why earlier I referred to honesty in terms of reality, because distorted is not real. So Nietzsche argued that willful ignorance can mislead individuals and contribute to the spread of falsehoods. That's logical. This choice to ignore certain truths can create a barrier to general understanding and moral responsibility. And this is why I'm bringing all this up, because all ties to morality. He viewed the behavior as a significant obstacle to personal growth and societal progress.
So willful ignorance, as you see it, is viewed as a behavior that has a significant obstacle of personal growth.
Absolutely, because if you don't deal with reality as reality, you're not going to grow very well.
Okay.
I mean, how, like in this show, if I don't oppose some view come up with out of the hat, and you bring this thing in that has no value at all, and I say, Mac, that's the most wonderful thing I ever heard, and I know it makes no sense, would I be helping you grow?
No, but you also go on to say here that you're introducing it because it is unchristian.
Yes, I'm introducing this subject. Because it's unchristian not to want to grow as a person and not to want to explore life and explore pursuing Jesus.
And for those of you listening to this show for the first time, there's an example of his brilliance. All right, now I'm going to try to get this name right. Did Nuchini...
No. No, I can't even. You can't even slide that under the door. You got to.
Nestle's.
Nietzsche.
Nietzsche, like
Nietzsche,
got a Nietzsche?
Nietzsche. Think Nestle's only different. Nietzsche. Think chocolate. Think Hershey. I don't care what you think, but this ain't Nietzsche. It's not that hard.
Okay. Did Nietzsche associate willful ignorance to anything in particular?
Yes. Funny you should ask. Nihilism. Remember when we talked about
nihilism?
Yeah, nihilism is when you believe in nothing. You believe nothing exists for any reason. Yeah.
I don't think you've ever used that word.
Oh, we did in a previous show. Yes, we did. When we talked about atheism and nihilism, when you believe in anything, it's even more basic than atheism because you don't deny just one thing. You just don't believe in anything.
That's nihilism.
Nihilism. And so he connected willful ignorance to this because if you're going to deny reality, right?
Yeah.
You're going to end up with nothing.
That's true.
Yeah. So anyway, suggesting that if you don't engage with certainty or complexity, think of that. You got paralyzed in despair.
So Nietzsche believed that embracing uncertainty and the quest for knowledge is essential to overcome what I'm going to call, what's the opposite of empathy?
Arrogance?
Maybe.
But what you end up with is despair. In other words, if you don't believe in anything, that isn't very human, is it?
Correct.
So he believed that embracing uncertainty and the quest for knowledge is essential for overcoming nihilistic tendencies. So in other words, by acknowledging the complexities of existence, individuals can cultivate a more profound understanding of life and their place within it. Now that is the Christian message.
Okay, so what does
Nietzsche
exploration of willful ignorance highlight?
Well,
he's saying it's important.
Well, what it highlights is the conditions for spreading untruths and raiding the spirit to deceive other spirits and to dissimulate in front of them. In other words, this results in masking of the truth, the cloaking of reality, and the suppression of facts in order to make oneself feel comfortable or assured or merely to avoid by being bothered by inconvenience of truth. So in other words, it's evil because God is truth, and it's the opposite.
You're listening to The View from a Pew. My co-host is Steve Arts, and we are in the process of writing a book. Steve is writing the book, and we do a audio and video program on each one of the chapters. And the overall concept for this program is why choose Christianity? And it is not a Sunday school class. This is not something you'd give to fourth graders to try to get them to understand why they would choose Christianity. Because of Steve's writing, this is sometimes really important, not only to the heart, but to a relationship with Jesus. And so we thank you for listening. This is Chapter 9, What is Willful Ignorance? And now we're going to talk a little bit about what do you personally believe is behind willful ignorance. Now, up there, you just said it was something about evil. So obviously, is that part of the answer there?
Well, in this sense, I believe fear is often the cornerstone of irrational thought, which in my opinion leads to willful ignorance. So if one is scared to know the truth, he will avoid it. The question then, and that is unchristian. That's not good. Because if you can't avoid the truth, I mean, think of that. The question then is, why would one be scared of the truth? So then the questions come into three things that just seem to underlie people deceiving themselves, and that's race, religion, and politics. Everything evolves around those three. For example, I'll just give you an example. Let's say an individual wants to believe that a given race is inferior due to intelligence. This person chooses not to expose himself to the truth, which means the truth would be that every race has intelligent individuals. This is an example of willful ignorance.
So every religion and every political outlook also has the same?
Well, what I'm saying, race, religion, and politics, we'll get into this more later, but the nature of those things, we're told not to talk about them, and the reason we're told not to talk about them is basically because that's what makes up life. What they're trying to say, there's really a control exercise here going on. We don't want you to think. We want you to act. And when that happens, we don't behave very rationally, and people that want to influence us know that. And that's also, and why I bring all this up is, this ties directly into our path of faith, how we go about it. If we don't explore for the truth, if we don't seek God continually, we're going to go down this path.
Okay, so something just hit me, and I'm probably being very simple here, but they say that you should never talk about politics, religion, and sex. And that's kind of what you're saying here. These are topics that are difficult to have with people because ignorance is an excuse to not participate in that conversation. Am I close?
Well, sex is always discussed. Race, religion, politics, those three. I know you said sex, but, well, it's on our mind. But the deal is that...
It's on your mind?
It's on your mind. I said your mind. I said your mind. I didn't say my mind.
It's not on my mind.
I didn't say sex. You did. So it wasn't on my mind. It came from you.
Go on, Grandpa.
So the question is, in my mind, not yours necessarily, does willful ignorance defy common sense? And there's a fellow by the name, now this name's tough, I tell you what. He wrote an article, World Magazine, entitled, Common Sense, Where Did It Go? His name is J. Budzelski. I think it's Polish. He said his wife laughs and says that nothing has happened to common sense, insisting that it's whatever the majority of people believe at any given moment. Now, let's not sink in a little bit. Any given moment. Now, I didn't realize this, but that's what you call momentary common sense, just for the moment. But there's also what is called universal common sense. This is the one that's more important, and that's the one where what most people believe most of the time, in most places and most times. Although not flawless, this is short of divine revelation, it's the best place for reflection to begin. This is a common sense. But the problem is this kind of common sense is declining in our own time and place because we're not reflecting on what we've learned.
Okay, I don't want to get into a political conversation.
Oh, please do.
Isn't that what we call this day and age of woke?
There is definitely a connection there, and I don't want to hedge on this, but we're going to be talking about that in much more detail in the future.
Okay.
And you're very perceptive to pick that up.
Well, when you're talking about common sense, and let me try to say this without being critical of woke, because I don't have any desire to be critical of it, but it does fly, at least for me, many times in the face of common sense.
Oh, absolutely. And by the way, go back to one thing, though. Race, religion, politics. Who says not to talk about them?
People who,
you have trouble remembering. I do, too, because we've been told it for so long. It's only the people it serves best. So who are they?
To be able, okay, tell me if this is a correct assumption. And I'm going to make an assumption. To be able to talk about those three topics, you have got to be able to have empathy. You've got to be able to see both sides. Because if not, all you do is, no, I'm right. No, I'm right. Well, why are you right? Because I'm right. Well, what makes you right? Because I'm right.
Well, and what
That's the ignorance part.
you're demonstrating what the problem is, and that is emotion before reason. You reacted 3 times with emotion without any reasoning behind it.
Right.
That's what happens in life. This is why, if we're told not to talk about these things, what we lose is our capability to reason about them.
Right.
So all we can do in reaction to all these things are react emotionally, which causes polarization, which causes division, and somewhere up the line, somebody wants that to happen. But God doesn't, and that's why I'm speaking up against it.
Okay, so what has contributed to this concept, like you said, the worship of youth leads to contempt for the qualities of the aged, not least the insight that comes from the experience. Tell me what that means to you.
Well, it means that we start taking what people think today, and we take and put that over traditions, experienced traditions, wisdom that we've learned from the past. When we do that, it's like putting a bear trap in front of you, and you step right in it, and you say, wow, that sure hurts, but we're doing it in the name of progress. No, the problem is we've got to not ignore what's been learned. And so many of our whippersnappers today are so smart, they can't imagine that they don't have absolutely all the answers. And the fact is, every generation, wisdom is not inherited. We have to accumulate that with experience, and accumulated experience is tradition, which translates into wisdom. So what is happening today, we're ignoring wisdom, and we're putting in turn, the idol we worship today is progress of what we're doing now with no connection to the past. We are saying, by worshiping our youth, we think that wisdom has no use. We are ignoring it. And then when we ignore that, we become more ignorant and less teachable. Think about what that leads. Yeah. That leads us empty. That leads us with all the answers, but no solutions.
Well, you're reminding me of a couple of my Macisms. And one is that the definition of humility is not meek or feeble, it's teachable. I'm humble if I say, okay, teach me something.
You're absolutely right.
I always tell people I like it when I'm wrong because I learn more when I'm wrong than when I am always right, and I'm never right.
If you're new to this show, it's very seldom that I agree with Mac, but there's a case where I do, because we older people understand this.
Well, and here's the other thing is, I always tell people that wisdom is something you hear, not something you say. In other words, when you say something, and you do quite often, you're a smart man, you say something that I go, oh, that's wise. But if I say, let me tell you something wise,
no,
that's not wisdom. That's
arrogance.
Arrogance, that's right. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Gee, we agree on 2 things?
No, let's just stick with one.
Yeah, I think so.
It's a long day.
I'll find something wrong with that before it's all over.
I want to get into the obituary for common sense, but what contributes to the loss of common sense? And then we'll get into the obituary.
Well, one of the things that contributed to it is higher education. Now think about this. This is so important to understand. Higher education has enlarged and refined the common sense the students had already, living in it, like with yeast, with the experience of mankind. Now, regrettably, before a certain age, none of us have enough common sense to be refined. So absurdly, higher education is teaching family law to people who still resent their parents, relations among the classes to people who have never held a job, and history to people who think themselves immortal. That's one of the reasons universities are havens, in my opinion, for crackpot ideologies, because they're putting everything out of step. And what that means is not accepting God's way, and that's what we get. When we try to play God, and higher education has, we end up to a mess. Now, that comes into play in what contributes to common sense. So this Jay Badurski, again, talked about this.
You messed that up.
Huh?
You didn't pronounce that right.
No, I didn't. Would you pronounce it for me?
No, I can't.
Well, I know. So it's
more than 4 letters.
Let's just say Jay. Jay said, and I don't know what his initial J stands for, but we'll just say Jay. Jay's a good name. But he said, this is his, I'm quoting now, perhaps front and center is runaway legalism. With less scope to exercise their common sense, people get out of the habit. Our lawmakers cannot bring themselves to leave the laws alone. They are always changing the old ones and making up new ones. There are fewer and fewer areas in which common sense has any room to operate. Judgment is buried in rules and regulations. Then there's the empire building. You got the bureaucrats, congressmen, usurping judges. They aren't the only ones that want to enlarge themselves. In every walk of life, there's expert busybodies making kingdoms by proclaiming they know better. So what we've got here...
You're Bud Skininsky guy.
Yes. And, yeah, you said that really well. I think that's right. So that's my guess anyway. So, do you want me to read this? You want to read it, or should we skip this?
No, I would like to read it.
You want to read it?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think I did not realize this was part of your script today, but I have this hanging in different places. I think there's a copy of it here. This is brilliant.
Now, one of the things I did on this, though, I found out who said this. I went back. Now,
Lori Borgman?
Yeah, she's the one that originated the obituary for common sense. Now, this is an updated version, but the credit goes back to Lori Bergman.
All right, so today we mourn the passing of a beloved old friend, Common Sense, who has been with us for many, many years. No one knows for sure how old he or she was, but since their birth, records were all long ago lost in bureaucratic red tape. They will be remembered as having cultivated such valuable lessons as A, knowing when to come in and out of the rain, B, why the early bird gets the worm, C, life isn't always fair, or as I like to say, the fair comes once a year in August, and D, and maybe it was my fault. Boy, that's a heavy one, isn't it?
Yeah, man.
Common Sense lived by simple and sound financial policies. Don't spend more than you can earn. And reliable strategies. Adults, not children, are in charge. I might... I'd meet some pretty smart... Of course, what's a child?
Well, that's right. I would call... Anybody, a responsible child could almost be an adult, can you say?
Well, yeah. I mean, there's a lot of kids that when they get to be 12, 13, 14 years old, they're pretty responsible adults.
Yeah. But children, I would say, anybody that's still under the jurisdiction of their parents to some degree.
Okay.
Not necessarily financially, but,
All right. Now, back to the obituary for Common Sense. His health began to deteriorate, that being common sense. Deteriorate rapidly when well-intentioned but overbearing regulations were set in place. Reports of a 6-year-old boy charged with sexual harassment for kissing a classmate. Teens suspended from school for using mouthwash after lunch. And a teacher fired for reprimanding an unruly student only worsened his condition. Common Sense lost ground when parents attacked teachers for doing the job that they themselves had failed to do in disciplining their unruly children. It declined even further when schools were required to get parental consent to administer sun lotion or an aspirin to the students, but could not inform parents when a student became pregnant and wanted to have an abortion. Common Sense lost the will to live as the churches became businesses and criminals received better treatment than their victims. Common Sense took a beating when you couldn't defend yourself from a burglar in your own home, and the burglar could actually sue you after breaking into your home for assault. Common sense finally gave up the will to live after a woman failed to realize that a steaming cup of coffee was hot. She spilled a little on her lap and was promptly awarded a huge financial settlement. Common sense was preceded in death by his parents, truth and trust, his wife, discretion, his daughter, responsibility, and his son, reason. He is survived by his 5 stepchildren. I know I'm right. I want it now. Someone else is to blame. I'm the victim, and pay me for doing nothing. Not many attended his funeral because so few realized he was gone. And if you still remember him, pass this on. If not, join the majority and do nothing. You're listening to The View from a Pew. My cohort is Steve Arntz, and we are talking about a great topic, which is what is willful ignorance when it comes to why choose Christianity. All right. Now, here's my next question for you, sir. Do you think there are some underlying reasons why pundits don't want us to discuss race, religion, and politics?
I do. Oh, by the way, just one thing, just on the comment of our current situation, we're lacking the number one problem existing for culture right now is apathy. Apathy is very, very much with us, and that shows up in how many people vote, how many people get involved, how many people turn and look the other way, you name it. Apathy is our number one enemy going on.
I don't know if you know this, but we had less than a 25% turnout nationally on the referendum that we just had 2 weeks ago, and that's just where we had to find which Republican and which Democrat was going to represent
the primaries.
Yeah, the primaries. Less than 25% of the people.
Yeah, it's scary because we're going to have a show on this, but on the silent majority isn't. They're way too silent, and this is due to apathy, and this is a real big problem in this country. So why race, religion, politics? What's it all about? Well, the subjects. Two subjects come to mind when these three come together, and that's abortion and euthanasia. Now, you might question why I say this, but this is my own thinking. Racially, killing is a great way to control the population of a given race. Think about it. Religiously, it supports that man became God versus God became man, because we're playing God. By deceiving ourselves into believing we are gods, there's nothing blocking the pursuit of quality of life at the expense of sanctity of life. I didn't forget politics. Politically, it becomes a bed of roses for the politicians, giving what some people want but know is wrong. By sanctioning abortion and euthanasia, as an example, people can deceive themselves by accepting that it is the rule or law of the land which justifies that it must be right. So, if we are told not to discuss race, religion, or politics, what that leads to is dividing us versus unifying us and deterring us from using reasoning. It encourages willful ignorance. And that is wrong.
Sometime we ought to have the conversation on euthanasia because you know how I feel about abortion. That's just not right. But thank God my biological mother didn't believe that, because she told me that if I had been conceived in 73 rather than in 58, she probably would have aborted me.
I wonder what she said when she saw you the first time.
Oh, my God, he does have a face for radio. I don't know. But on the euthanasia, though, we have, I just put my parents through hospice last year, both of them. And I don't know how you can tell the difference between what they did with my parents and using the word euthanasia. In the last couple weeks of their lives, they were not mentally there. They were all drugged up, which I'm glad, because they weren't in pain. But isn't that euthanasia? Isn't when you only feed them by a feeding tube? Isn't that euthanasia? And I'm really asking the question. I'm not trying to make a statement.
Oh, good, because
I just watched that last year, and I just thought, oh, my gosh.
well, my understanding of euthanasia is when a healthy person shows up at a hospital. This actually happened in Canada.
Yeah, I was going to say it happens all the time.
It happened in Canada because they got that wide open up there. And she was 84 years old, and she had a stomach ache or something. I mean, something that could be remedied. But the first thing they asked the doctor, would you like to be put to death? First question. Not what hurts, not what you're in. I'm not making this.
Use the word death?
No, they probably say you want to pass out or you want to leave this world. I don't know how they say it, but it's pretty clear. Before asking what's wrong, exploring anything, would you like to exit life?
Well, and you're right.
That's euthanasia.
Yeah.
Okay, now, just in passing here, it was very easy to remedy. She said, no, I don't want to do that. And she's traveled the world since, and she's written on this because it's such a violation of humanity, okay? It's a violation of everything. And so that's what euthanasia is. Now, what you're talking about is if you're on a machine and you're not conscious anymore and all this, and it's a question of pulling the plug, okay? That can be written into wills, all that sort of thing.
Yeah.
That is not euthanasia. Okay? That is not euthanasia.
Okay. I'm learning something here. I would have told you they're the same.
Euthanasia basically is saying you can exit anytime you want and we'll help you.
Okay.
And it's legal. That's the danger.
Does this tie into a critical race theory?
Yeah, believe it or not, it's critical race theory to me is a bogus attempt to construe racism as something it wasn't, and to further assert accountability and retribution from those who had nothing to do with it. Textbooks are being rewritten to accommodate this theory, not fact, theory, that is taught as fact. This is outright distortion, and Nietzsche warned us about that too.
But how does willful ignorance affect religious expression? You got to connect that.
I know, and it's time to bring it home, isn't it? Bring home the bacon, as they say. Okay, I like bacon. Who doesn't like bacon? I can't find. I've never found somebody who doesn't like bacon.
Go on.
So, in some sectors,
Porky the pig does not like bacon.
Well, yeah, you know what? That's when I come here, I have to go past a bacon plant, and I mean to say,
go.
I have to eat before I come.
That's not a bacon plant. That's chicken. You talking about bison?
No, they have a chicken. They have a bacon plant right close here too. My microwave all this bacon and goes to the restaurants and everything.
Okay, go
ahead. You
ahead.
ought to see that, man. It's just I watched it and I've had.
Sorry for those of you listening.
I'm sorry. I divert. Okay. Well, here's the problem. In some sectors,
I can't edit it out.
Yeah, and I can't always agree. So what's the loose? So in some sectors, religion has become so distorted that it's hard to recognize, and that's the problem. Because those that believe in Judaism, Christianity, Islam, have more in common than not. When they say that, they're deceiving themselves at the highest level while sacrificing every moral fiber they have by accommodating false teachings. And I mean, why is it Christianity? Well, it's different than the others, right? So if we're going to say, oh, that doesn't matter, who's kidding who? We're being hypocritical. So the LGBT and all that is a good example of church leadership deceiving themselves into believing two sexes have nothing to do with identity period, or God. The Bible is very easy to understand, but we Christians are a bunch of scheming swindlers. I said it. We are. Because we pretend to be unable to understand it because we know very well that the minute we understand, we are obliged to act accordingly. And that was Soren Kierkegaard. And who could argue with a great philosopher like him?
Okay. Let's bring it home. How does all of this tie into the current culture? Wrap it up.
Well, there's a culture commentator that I thought really had this figured out. His name is Paul Anleitner. And here's what he said.
Modern day?
Yes, this is really pretty cool.
Okay.
He said, here's an uncomfortable truth about the Epstein's accusations. That's correct.
You're talking about the Epstein files.
Yes.
Okay.
We only find them reprehensible because of Christianity. Before the spread of Christianity, civilized Greek and Roman elites openly flaunted underage sex slaves. This was normal.
Well, and there was no such thing as underage.
Yes, exactly. Yes. We've heard it could be their sex. It just was rampant. We heard for decades that Christianity is a barrier to moral progress. But if you undercut the moral foundations of Christianity in the West, culture reverts back to paganism. If you are being willfully ignorant, I tell you, stop it. Just plain stop it. Don't be willfully ignorant. It's stupid. Seek the truth regardless of the perceived cost, because that is the only way to release yourself from the prison of fear, deception, and corruption.
Well, thank you very much, Steve. Thank you for coming in and helping us answer the question, why choose Christianity? This was Chapter 9, What is Willful Ignorance? I'm Mac McCoy. Thank you very much for listening to The View from a Pew. We'd like to thank our worldwide sponsor, Divine Truth Christian Store. And thanks for listening.
Divine Truth.